Alright, so I never thought I'd be in a situation like this, but here we are. My name's Jake, and a few months ago, I was living my life in peace. Divorced, single, and finally getting my finances back on track after the nightmare that was my marriage to Lena. I should have known better. Lena and I were married for 5 years, and looking back, I think she saw me as more of an ATM than a husband. She wasn't always like that, or maybe she was, and I was just blind to it. Either way, after years of emotional manipulation, controlling behavior, and little mysteries about where she was at odd hours, we got divorced. Best decision of my life. Then, out of nowhere, I get a thick envelope in the mail. Legal documents. A summons. For child support. For a kid I never had. First, I thought it was a mistake. Had to be, right? Some kind of clerical error. But nope. There it was, black and white. Lena was claiming I had abandoned her and our 1-year-old son, and that I owed her back payments. I stared at that paper for a solid 5 minutes, my brain refusing to process it. I mean, I knew Lena was a liar, but this was next-level insanity. I immediately called my lawyer, Marcus. The guy is a shark. Cool-headed, ruthless in court, and one of the only people I trusted. He told me to come in ASAP. I barely slept that night, just laying there, wondering what the hell was going on. The next morning, I was in Marcus' office, documents spread out between us. He flipped through them with a frown, then sighed and leaned back. "This isn't a joke, Jake," he said. "She filed in a way that, if you don't fight this fast, you could legally be declared the father, whether it's true or not." My stomach dropped. But, I mean, that's not even possible, right? I never had a kid with her. Marcus pinched the bridge of his nose. Some states have tricky laws. If you were still legally married around the time of conception, the court could presume you're the father. And if you don't contest it in time, the court might rule in her favor. DNA test or not. Lena had planned this. She'd filed this claim without DNA proof, probably hoping I'd panic, settle, or miss some deadline. I had 2 options. Ignore it and risk the court siding with her by default. Fight like hell. Marcus didn't even have to ask. "We're getting a DNA test," I said, my voice tight, "and we're exposing whatever scam she's running." He nodded. "Good, because I have a feeling she's not done playing games." And, oh, was he right? A week later, I found myself in court, sitting across from Lena. She showed up looking like some kind of struggling single mother stereotype. Messy ponytail, oversized cardigan, and just the right amount of smudged mascara to make it look like she'd been crying. I almost laughed. Lena didn't cry. Not unless she was faking it for sympathy. Her lawyer was some guy who clearly thought this was an open-and-shut case. Meanwhile, Marcus was sitting next to me, cool as ever, flipping through our paperwork like we had all the time in the world. The judge walked in, and right away, Lena turned on the waterworks. "Your Honor," she started, her voice all shaky. "This has been so difficult. I never thought I'd have to raise my son alone. Jake abandoned us. He left me when I was pregnant. He won't even acknowledge his own child." I actually laughed. Out loud. Couldn't help it. The sheer audacity. Marcus, ever the professional, simply leaned forward. "Your Honor, we would like to request a court-ordered DNA test before proceeding any further." Lena's lawyer stood up fast. "That's not necessary. Mr. Reynolds was still legally married to my client at the time of conception, which makes him the presumed father under the law." Presumed. That word made my blood boil. The judge raised an eyebrow. "That may be true, but a DNA test will clear up any doubts. If Mr. Reynolds is the biological father, he will be obligated to provide support. If not, we will dismiss this case." Lena let out a soft sob, shaking her head. I just can't believe he'd put me through this. He knows he's the father." I leaned forward, making sure my voice was loud and clear. "I know that's not my kid, Lena." She sniffled dramatically but didn't look at me. That was the moment I knew she had a backup plan. The judge sighed. "The test will be scheduled within the next week. Court is adjourned until results are received." I exhaled, feeling like I'd won a small battle. But as I was walking out, Lena grabbed my arm and whispered, You're making a mistake. I yanked my arm away. No, Lena. You did. She smirked. And that's when I realized. She wasn't scared at all. She had something else planned. The moment Lena smirked at me, I knew something was up. She wasn't nervous. She wasn't scared that her lie would be exposed. She was confident. I didn't like that. The next few days were a blur of frustration and waiting. Marcus set up the court-ordered DNA test, and I showed up at the clinic first thing in the morning. A nurse swabbed my cheek, sealed the sample, and sent me on my way. Quick, painless, but nerve-wracking as hell. Lena had scheduled her appointment for later that afternoon, and I knew she'd bring the baby in. Not that I had any doubts, but a tiny part of me needed to see this kid for myself. So I waited, and sure enough, Lena showed up. Strolling in like this was just another errand. But what really threw me off? The kid looked nothing like me. I mean, I knew he wouldn't, but this kid had dark curly hair, deep brown eyes, and a skin tone a couple of shades darker than either mine or Lena's. I don't say this to be rude, but there was no way in hell I was the father. Lena caught me staring and shot me the fakest sad smile I'd ever seen. You see it now, don't you? She whispered. He has your nose. I almost choked. My nose? Lady, are you blind? I didn't bother responding. I just turned and walked out before I said something that would get me in trouble. That night, I sat in my apartment, waiting for the results. I should have been relieved. DNA doesn't lie. But something about Lena's attitude kept gnawing at me. Then Marcus called. We have a problem, he said. I sat up straight. What do you mean? The test hasn't even come back yet. Marcus sighed. Lena just submitted financial records claiming that you provided for her during her pregnancy. Bills, transactions, even rent payments. My head spun. Because we were still married. I paid for everything because we hadn't finalized the divorce yet. Exactly, Marcus said. But she's twisting it. She's claiming you knew the baby was yours all along, and that's why you supported her financially. My stomach dropped. Lena wasn't just trying to take my money. She was trying to rewrite history. After Marcus dropped that bombshell about Lena's financial records, I just sat there, gripping my phone like it had personally wronged me. She's setting me up, I finally said. Obviously, Marcus replied. She's trying to build a case that you acted like the father regardless of biology. Some courts care more about behavior than DNA. If she convinces the judge that you accepted responsibility, they might still rule in her favor. I felt sick. But I wasn't accepting responsibility. I was just paying bills because we were still married. Marcus sighed. I know. But she's banking on the fact that a judge might not see it that way. I wanted to throw something. This wasn't just a greedy cash grab. Lena was strategic about this. She knew exactly how to twist things to make me look guilty. I needed to fight back. First, I went through all my bank statements, looking for anything that could contradict her claim. I found payments for rent, utilities, groceries, all the basics. But then, I noticed something. A weird transfer. A few months before the baby was born, $1,200 had left my account. The memo just said, personal loan. But I didn't remember lending anyone money. I called Marcus. I think Lena took money from me and labeled it as something else. Send me the details, he said immediately. A few hours later, he called back, his voice tight. That money? It didn't go toward rent. It was sent directly to another man's account. I sat up straight. What? Who? Marcus hesitated. His name is Daniel Vaughn. I had no idea who that was, but something told me Lena did. And if she was sending him money, there was more to this story. After Marcus dropped that name, Daniel Vaughn, I felt a chill run down my spine. Who is he? I asked, already dreading the answer. Marcus exhaled. I did some digging. He's interesting. No social media presence, but I found some financial records. Lena has been sending him money for over a year. Small amounts at first, then bigger transfers, including the $1,200 she took from you. I gripped my phone tighter. And she claimed that money was for rent. Yep, Marcus said. She lied. I clenched my jaw. I needed to find out who this guy was. Marcus kept talking. I also checked public records. Guess what? Daniel Vaughn lives in the same city. And get this, he listed a dependent on a recent loan application. A 1-year-old son. I swear, my blood froze. No, wait. There was no way that was a coincidence. Are you telling me? I started, but Marcus cut me off. I'm saying Daniel Vaughn is a strong candidate for being the real father. It all made sense now. The smirk Lena gave me in court. The weird confidence. The way the baby looked nothing like me. She knew. She had to. And she thought she could get away with it. I was done playing defense. I wanted answers. And the only way to get them? Find Daniel Vaughn. I wasn't about to sit around waiting for the DNA results. If Lena thought she could play me, she was about to learn just how wrong she was. So, I did something that probably wasn't the smartest move. I went looking for Daniel Vaughn. Marcus told me where the guy lived. It wasn't some luxury apartment or anything. Just a small, run-down rental on the other side of town. I drove there, my heart pounding the whole way. I had no plan. I just knew I needed to see his face. When I knocked, I half expected no one to answer. But after a few seconds, the door creaked open, and there he was. Daniel Vaughn. Mid-30s, scruffy beard, tired eyes. Looked like life had hit him with a baseball bat. "Can I help you?" he asked, eyeing me like I was a debt collector. I took a deep breath. "Yeah, I think you can. Do you know Lena?" The moment I said her name, his whole expression changed. His grip tightened on the door, and for a second, I thought he might slam it in my face. But then he sighed. "You're the ex-husband, aren't you?" I nodded slowly. "And you're the guy she's been sending money to." He let out a humorless laugh. "Yeah, not by choice." That caught me off guard. "What do you mean?" Daniel rubbed his face like he was debating how much to say. Then he stepped outside, pulling the door shut behind him. "Look, man," he said. "I don't want any trouble. I've had enough of Lena's drama." "Then tell me the truth," I pressed. "Is the kid yours?" Daniel hesitated. He didn't answer right away. And that was all the confirmation I needed. My stomach twisted. "You've got to be kidding me." He shook his head. "I told her to leave me out of this. I told her to get the test and stop playing games." He sighed. "But Lena? She always has a backup plan." I clenched my fists. And that backup plan was me. Daniel didn't deny it. He just nodded. "She told me it was my kid," he admitted. "But then she turned around and told me not to say anything. Then she started demanding money, like I owed her." His voice turned bitter. "She said if I didn't pay up, she'd find someone else to take responsibility." And there it was. Lena had been running a scam from the start. She knew Daniel was the father. She knew I wasn't. And she didn't care. I stared at Daniel, my hands shaking with anger. She wasn't finding someone else. She was trying to pin it on me. He looked down. "Yeah, I figured." I let out a slow breath, trying to keep myself from losing it right there. Lena thought she was so damn smart. She thought she could rewrite history, manipulate the system, and trap me into paying for her mess. But she made one mistake. She underestimated me. I left Daniel's place feeling like I'd been hit by a truck. Every piece of the puzzle had fallen into place, and it all pointed to one thing. Lena knew exactly what she was doing. She wasn't just lying to me. She was lying to the court. I called Marcus the second I got into my car. "I just talked to Daniel," I said, my voice tight. "He knows the kid is his. Lena's been extorting him for money, and now she's trying to pin the kid on me." Marcus let out a low whistle. "Damn, she's bolder than I thought." "She's also sloppy," I said. "Daniel's pissed. He didn't even know she took me to court." There was a pause. Then Marcus asked, "Would he be willing to testify?" That stopped me. Would he? I hadn't asked. Daniel seemed like the kind of guy who just wanted to be left alone. But if I could get him to speak up, Lena's whole case would crumble. "I'll find out," I said. The next move. That night I texted Daniel. "Me. If you're serious about not wanting Lena to screw you over, you need to come to court." He took a while to respond. Then finally, "Daniel, I don't want to get dragged into this mess. clenched my jaw. Typical. Me, she's already dragged you in. If you don't say something, she'll keep scamming people. Another long pause. Then, Daniel, what do I have to do? Bingo. I looped Marcus in, and within a day we had Daniel signing an affidavit confirming everything. That Lena told him he was the father, that she demanded money, and that she was trying to pin the baby on me. Now all we had to do was wait for the DNA test results. Lena thought she had me backed into a corner. She had no idea that I was about to flip the whole damn table. A few days later, I got the call from Marcus. The DNA test came back, he said. You ready for this? I already knew the answer, but my chest still tightened. Go ahead. You are not the father. I let out a breath I didn't even realize I was holding. Relief, anger, vindication, all at once. But before I could celebrate, Marcus hit me with a warning. Don't get cocky yet. Lena isn't the type to just roll over. She's going to push back. Hard. He wasn't wrong. The next day we were back in court. Lena was sitting across from me, looking smug, until the judge started reading the DNA results. When he reached the words excluded as the biological father, I saw the exact moment it hit her. Her whole body tensed. Then waterworks. No, 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 she whimpered, shaking her head. This has to be a mistake. Her lawyer looked like he wanted to crawl under the table. He didn't know she was bluffing. The judge cleared his throat. The test is conclusive. Mr. Reynolds is not the child's father. And then the best part. Marcus stood up. Your Honor, in light of these results, we would like to submit additional evidence. He handed over Daniel Vaughn's affidavit. Lena froze. The judge skimmed it, then narrowed his eyes. Ms. Reynolds, do you have a response to this? Lena stammered. I don't even know who that is. Marcus didn't even blink. Really? Because we have financial records proving that you sent him money. Money you took from my client under false pretenses. Her face went pale. I leaned back in my chair, watching as the walls closed in on her. She wasn't just losing the case. She was about to go down hard. I've seen Lena lie before. Hell, I spent years watching her fake tears to get her way. But this was next-level panic. Her hands were shaking. Her lawyer was flipping through the affidavit, probably wondering how he got stuck defending a con artist. The judge just sat there, waiting for her to explain. Finally, Lena blurted out, "This is a setup. He's trying to ruin my life." I actually laughed, out loud, in court. Marcus, ever the professional, leaned forward. Ms. Reynolds, are you saying these financial records are fake? That your client never made these payments? Lena's mouth opened, but nothing came out. She was trapped. The judge sighed. Ms. Reynolds, you were given the opportunity to provide evidence of paternity. The DNA test has ruled out Mr. Reynolds. Furthermore, the affidavit and financial records indicate that you knowingly misled the court. Lena lost it. Tears, sobbing, hands covering her face like she was the victim. I didn't know what else to do. He abandoned me, and I was struggling, and Daniel wouldn't help, and I cut her off. I was done listening to her excuses. You didn't struggle, Lena. You plotted. You lied. You tried to trap me into paying for a kid that wasn't mine while shaking down the real father for cash. She snapped her head up, eyes full of hatred. You don't understand. You never understood what I went through. I scoffed. And yet, somehow, you always had money to get your nails done. Huh? The judge banged his gavel. Enough. Then he turned to Lena's lawyer. I suggest you advise your client to remain silent before she digs herself an even deeper hole. Her lawyer looked like he wanted to disappear. Lena had just admitted to everything. At that point, it wasn't just about getting the case dismissed. I wanted payback. And the judge? He wasn't done with her yet. The courtroom was dead silent. Lena had just admitted she lied. Her lawyer looked like he was about to throw up. And the judge? He was done. He rubbed his temples, let out a deep sigh, then fixed his eyes on Lena. Ms. Reynolds, do you understand what you've done? He asked, voice sharp. Lena sniffled, trying to play the victim. I was just desperate. I thought Jake would step up and The judge cut her off. No, Ms. Reynolds. What you did was attempt to commit paternity fraud. You knowingly misled the court, wasted judicial resources, and tried to financially burden a man for a child that is not his. Lena's face drained of color. Her lawyer scrambled. Your Honor, my client was under severe emotional distress. The judge wasn't having it. Your client was not under distress. She orchestrated a scheme for financial gain. That is fraud, counselor. I glanced at Marcus, and for the first time since this started, he looked genuinely pleased. Given the circumstances, the judge continued, I am dismissing this case with prejudice, which means you cannot refile this claim against Mr. Reynolds. Boom. Lena lost, but the judge wasn't done. Furthermore, Mr. Reynolds, if you wish to pursue legal action for damages, I strongly suggest you do so. Lena's head snapped toward me, eyes wild with panic. Jake, please, don't do this. I just stared at her. She had no idea how done I was, because now, it was my turn to take her to court. Lena must have thought I'd just walk away now that the case was dismissed. That I'd be so relieved to be free that I wouldn't bother making her pay for what she did. She was wrong. I wasn't about to let her get away with this. Not after she dragged me through court, humiliated me, and tried to rob me blind. So, with Marcus leading the charge, I sued her. We went after her for legal fees, emotional distress, and fraud. And let me tell you, Lena did not take it well. She blew up my phone, leaving voicemails filled with fake apologies. Jake, please, we don't have to do this. I was in a bad place. I made a mistake. Don't ruin my life over it. I was scared. You wouldn't understand what it's like being a single mom. Oh, now she was scared? Now she wanted sympathy? I ignored every single message. Then she tried guilt-tripping me through mutual friends. I can't believe Jake is doing this to me, she sobbed to one of them. I was just trying to take care of my baby. But no one was buying it anymore. Word had spread fast. Lena wasn't a victim. She was a scammer. And when the court date came, Lena lost again. She was ordered to pay back my legal fees and a settlement for damages. Her face when the judge announced the ruling? Priceless. She actually tried to cry her way out of it, talking about how she was a broke single mother and didn't have the money. The judge just stared at her and said, You should have thought of that before committing fraud. I could have kissed him. Now, Lena was broke and humiliated. But the best part? I wasn't done yet. Lena thought she could just disappear after the ruling. Lay low, avoid me, and hope I'd forget about her. But Karma had other plans. A week after she lost the lawsuit, I got a message from Daniel Vaughn. Daniel, you're not going to believe this. Lena just hit me up asking for money again. I laughed out loud. She never learned. Apparently, since she couldn't scam me anymore, she tried to go back to shaking down Daniel. Except now he wasn't putting up with it. He blocked her. Then, a few days later, Lena got evicted. She couldn't afford her rent without my money or Daniel's. Word spread through our old social circles, and suddenly, Lena wasn't the struggling single mom. She was the woman who tried to scam 2 men and got caught. Mutual friends stopped talking to her. People from her job found out. Even her own family started distancing themselves. She sent me one last voicemail. Jake, I lost everything. I'm sorry. I never meant to hurt you. I didn't know what else to do. I didn't respond. I didn't care. Because for the first time in years, I was finally free. No more lies. No more manipulation. No more Lena. She played a stupid game. And she won the biggest stupid prize.